Hello and welcome to another episode of Latitude. The Islamic State, earlier known as the ISIS, has just completed 1 year since the establishment of its caliphate. It is today the world's richest terrorist group with a powerful army controlling a large mass of land and has enough sources of funding on a regular basis to continue with its acts of terror across the world, as we noticed recently with 4 concentrated attacks in 4 different parts of the world. One of the biggest concerns to the international community is that despite the bombings of the Islamic State and their militant groups and the efforts to control its expansion, they continue to draw recruits from all parts of the world. We are going to look at the subject of the Islamic State and its future and its agenda with 2 experts on the subject. I have with me Dr. Sreeram Chaulia, the Dean of the Jindal School of International Affairs. Dr. Sreeram, Islamic State continues to draw militants from various countries. The largest, I'm told, is the consignment they get from Central Asian countries, where the Prime Minister of India is soon due to visit, and it's a subject that the Prime Minister is probably going to bring up quite seriously with many other Central Asian countries. But its recruitment base is beyond the Arab world, though you've written to say that a large number of disgruntled youth from the Arab world continue to join the ISIS. They get recruits from as far away as Southeast Asia. They get apparently a very large number even from Australia. What's your view, and how do you see that it has not been able to impact sufficiently on India?
Well, the global pattern of recruitment is not new in the sense Al-Qaeda also had operatives across dozens of countries. But what is interesting is that the Islamic State has a territorial concept of power, while Al-Qaeda used to be much looser. It was purely a terrorist organization. Islamic State, ISIS wants people to flock to Iraq and Syria and then also to launch attacks in their home countries. So therefore, it's a kind of a double-edged sword, where on one hand they want to overthrow what they consider to be apostates, Shia regimes in Iraq and Syria, but on the other hand, they also want to foment a kind of a worldwide movement playing on the notion of the Ummah, or the brotherhood of all the Muslims across the world, especially Sunni Muslims, which is their main constituency.
Dr. Sreeram, it is said that the largest number of recruits that the ISIS or the Islamic State will continue to target would be from Asia, because Asia provides 1/3 of the Muslim population or more, particularly in Southeast Asia, where a large number of Muslims reside. But equally important for the world is the fact that, as you've written, that a large number of disgruntled Arab youth tend to be veering more and more towards the Islamic State as a response to the very rigidly controlled societies that they operate in. So they would rather like to go with something which also offers them, assumably, a holy mission as compared to a life of restriction which they live in the Arab world, and they see that their rulers are far from inspiring. Do you agree with this thesis?
Absolutely. Political frustration and restrictions are the core, behind the people wanting to join terrorist organizations. It's been proven that there's no link between poverty and terrorism. You often find highly motivated terrorists who are very well off and highly educated, right? So it goes back to the point that if they feel powerless in these kinds of authoritarian regimes, the entire Middle East, despite the brief Arab Spring, remains mired in that kind of regime type. And therefore, it becomes fertile ground for young people to seek salvation in this, mythical being that's been created out there in the Levant, and which promises to keep spreading and to bring back the glories of, Harun al-Rashid and of Baghdad, where, so this is where I think it's a dream. In many ways, they're selling a dream, but there are many takers for it. As is seen, 100 countries is not a small number. We didn't see that much multinational character even in the anti-Soviet jihad in Afghanistan in the 1980s. So this is something qualitatively bigger, and it plays upon the anxieties and the fears and the political marginalization of young people in these regions.
Dr. Sreeram, the Islamic State has been eyeing India for a variety of reasons. India has one of the largest Muslim populations in the world, perhaps the second or third largest Shia populations also outside of Iran and some other countries. It is also a country where the IS has not been able to reach out with the kind of impact that it has managed to have already in societies like Afghanistan and Pakistan. What do you believe could be the reasons why India has kept out of the reach of the Islamic State?
Well, if you think about it demographically, it's easier for them because the core are Arabs. The leadership comes mainly from Iraq and Syria. But they are, in fact, Indonesia. I was just in Indonesia recently, and you said South and Southeast Asia. Both of them are now prey to this menace because there are, alienated young people. And while the bulk of Indian Muslims are very, very well integrated and patriotic, you will always have some, because now you have the so-called self-radicalization. So all you need is to go online and look up and read up some of these hardline websites and propaganda videos of Daesh, and that's enough. I was reading even in Palestinian territory, which is Gaza controlled by Hamas, you now have an ISIS branch there. In Afghanistan, which is very tightly controlled by Al-Qaeda, Taliban, now you have ISIS branches there. So they are obviously, this is like the toast of the times. Everybody wants to be on this bandwagon because it seems to be having an upper hand and fighting what they call the Rafidis and the Safavids, which is a pejorative references to Iran and to Shias. So in many ways, the sectarian sentiment is being exploited. And you're very right to say, Maruf, that within India also, we must watch out for the security of Shia places of worship and Shia communities, which are minorities, but which could be attacked because this is how the virus spreads, by saying that these are not true Muslims and we need to wipe them out. Pakistan has a long history of anti-Shia violence already, some of which was promoted by the state. So our region, and even in Southeast Asia, there is this sectarian schism, and ISIS really thrives on this. ISIS also, of course, goes after minorities like Yazidis and Christians and Coptics. So it's really a challenge for multi-ethnic societies that have got minority groups to how to preserve them, how to create harmony and unity. Already it is breaking down in many parts because of the ISIS thrust.
Great points, but also I think we need to be looking at one other factor which really works in India's favor, is the fact that traditionally India's Muslims have subscribed to India's secular identity, as you touched upon, but also that a number of mosques reports have come in that the Maulanas in the mosques and the ulema have been actually giving sermons after Friday prayers to say that what a negative example of Islam the ISIS has been creating, and it is something that the Muslims would do well to avoid. Dr. Sreeram, last question. President Obama said that the ISIS is a cancer and therefore it should be prevented from expanding. I think the first sensible step in that direction should be to try and ensure that countries that surround the ISIS empire as of now, such as Jordan, as Dr. Awad has brought out, should be provided extra military and political diplomatic protection. And likewise, other countries where the threat is expected, there has to be a bigger effort to do that, because Singapore's leader has said that this could be a problem that could be around for 50 years. What's your view?
We need to create a global movement to counter this. And I don't think the Americans can do it because in a way they are also compromised. And the problem is that they are allied with some of these hardline Sunni monarchies in the region, which are not averse to ISIS expansion. That's the bottom line, because they think ISIS is ultimately going to counter Iran. It's a bit like in the 1930s, a lot of the Western European countries were saying, let fascism grow because it is going to counter the Soviet Union. And then what happened? You had World War and such destruction. So allowing ISIS to grow is also almost become the DNA of the US-led coalition. So they are not. It's a very half-hearted and piecemeal effort, So I think we need other players to come in who have a real stake and who are affected by it, especially Iran. And keeping it out of the tent is not going to help. So yes, they need to shore up different fronts. But we in India and Southeast Asia, leading countries like Indonesia, we've got to rise up to the occasion. We've got to counter them ideologically, but also make diplomatic and military contributions to try and trounce this monster that's arisen.
Okay.